Welcome everyone, they call me IntroTechOut and I like making first-person shooters and dreams. Because I continually want to improve my skills to slowly get to AAA level in regards to quality of gameplay, I've been looking a lot at real games for inspiration. Something really important that we usually don't think about too much is first-person animations. Reload animations in particular. Until very recently, these weren't that interesting. Developers just made the character reload. Sometimes with a bit of flair, sometimes in a more realistic way, but the reload animations rarely really captured your attention or heightened your immersion. That's until Call of Duty Modern Warfare came along and showed the industry how it's done. Now, full disclosure, I don't own Modern Warfare or any Call of Duty for that matter, but it proves even more how legendary the animations in that game are. Matter of fact, I think the animations in Modern Warfare are an eye-opening moment for the industry. The bar has been raised and I fully expect other games to try to get to that level. But why? Because the animations are visceral, aggressive, snappy and realistic. But what makes the animations visceral, aggressive, snappy and realistic? That's what I'll talk about this video. Those professional animations might seem impossible to replicate, but actually you'll find that the general ingredients used to construct them are quite easy to understand. Now don't get me wrong, it won't be easy at all to make reload animations like Modern Warfare, but if you understand the couple principles behind them, you can massively improve your animation quality regardless. Important to realize is that the animation tips I found are not exclusively applicable to reload animations. They pretty much work for everything. If you haven't really looked into this topic yourself, I think you'll find some real handy tips this video. Let's start by talking about what normal reload animations lack. I'll do this by discussing my work of last year when I started making my first FPS games. And it's funny, you might think you know everything it takes to make a reload animation when you start out, but you don't. It'll immediately be clear something's off, but it won't be clear what exactly or how to solve it. That counts for my first reload animation, which I made about a year ago at this point. It was really crappy. Basically I just made the left hand take away and place the magazine. It didn't even occur to me that I should be doing anything else, but that first animation is too janky to even start properly criticizing it. So let's move on to my first real attempt at nice reloads. These were for this FPS character I made that could weapon swap. The character was very much inspired by Halo. Here's where I learned my first important lesson. Every limb should move every frame. Here's what I mean. When you start out in Dreams, most players will only animate or think about one thing at a time. You'll move the gun into view, then you'll make the left hand take out the magazine, and then you'll make the left hand place the new magazine. But there's a problem. Humans can't hold their hands still, especially when they're holding a heavy piece of metal. So to simulate the slight movement that would happen in real life, I had to animate the hand holding the gun, even if the other hand was doing something else. I found that you don't really have to think about this movement at all. Just slightly rotate it in some random directions and your animation will suddenly look way more fluid and human. I did sometimes break this rule though, to emphasize weight and power. On the sniper rifle animation I made, you can see that the hands briefly pause as they try to rip out the magazine. It makes it feel like it took more effort. I have to say though, don't do this. I'll discuss the proper method for conveying weight and power in a bit. The actual solution is quite similar, but it's important to establish the background theory first, because you'll be able to improve your animations much more with that information instead of this little trick. Anyway, the reload animations of this FPS character still don't feel right. They're a bit floaty and not really that satisfying. They really feel part of the background, you won't be admiring them during gameplay. For about half a year I didn't learn any new tricks and barely touched reloads at all, as I was busy improving skills in other areas. But then came 2020, and during the spring I finally spent time properly trying to analyze and understand reload animations, so I could improve mine. I learned a lot during this time and I will try to pass on what I've learned to you. By the way, when I say words like analyze and research, it all sounds real professional, but I was basically just watching YouTube videos and reloading the hell out of any weapon in any game I could find. My goal was to find out which animations were most satisfying and why. I took a look at the reload animations of the following games: Halo Reach, Halo 5, Rainbow Six Siege, Killzone Shadowfall, Battlefield 4, Destiny 2, Payday 2, Titanfall 2, Crysis 2, Metro Exodus and Call of Duty Modern Warfare. These franchises all have unique design philosophies to them and I really enjoyed seeing the differences in approach. I don't own all of these games, so for a lot of them I just watched YouTube videos of reload animations over and over, often in quarter speed and frame by frame to analyze every little movement. I'll drop links to some of the videos in the description, because these channels really deserve the recognition for making such long compilations. The first important thing I realized had to do with the insertion of the magazines. Part of the reason why my animations felt so floaty and unrealistic is that the magazine was always just pushed into the gun with no resistance, no change in speed, Nothing. When we take a look at real life again, it becomes clear real quickly why this feels so wrong. We as humans never really perform actions in one single motion. For example, when you press a button, you always bring your finger close first, only to then press. You don't slam down your hand in a single motion, because you'll miss too easily. So in a lot of games you'll see that they make the character pause for a short moment as the magazine first connects with the gun. Only after the pause the magazine is inserted with the satisfying click. But not every game does that. In Destiny and Halo in particular, I found that this often isn't done and animations feel a lot more floaty and in my opinion less satisfying because of it. The satisfaction bit is important. This seemingly small thing about a slight pause before inserting a magazine is not an isolated thing. It has to do with one of the most fundamental principles of animation: anticipation. In my quest to find the ultimate animation tips, I immediately came across the 12 principles of animation. I'm still very new to this whole thing, so it was really eye-opening, but anyone who does animation professionally probably learned those 12 principles like day one. So what are those 12 principles? Not important right now, though you can easily find videos on it if you want to. What is important is that they together pretty much describe what makes for satisfying animation, though the principles are mainly aimed at 2D instead of 3D animation. Anticipation is in my opinion one of the most important principles when you're talking about aggressive first-person animations. The idea behind anticipation is that before you display an action, you first set it up with another movement. The most clear example I can give is one of my first melee animations. It's in that same character I made last year. You can see that my melee animations were very direct. The hands immediately pushed the gun forwards. But after I did the research that eventually led to this video, I started making animations like this. Can you see how anticipation makes a difference and why it wouldn't immediately be obvious to do this if you just got started with animation without looking at any theory? By making the character first wind up for a hit, the animation feels more realistic and more satisfying because you get to anticipate the action. Of course, this principle can be applied to anything and everything. So let's get back to that magazine. Anticipation should not just be applied to the insertion of the magazine, but to removal as well. That results in an animation where the left hand grabs the magazine, stays on it for a little bit and then removes it with maximum force. And by the way, something specific to Dreams, turn off smoothing for the keyframes where these kinds of movements happen. If you don't do that, Dreams will try to keep the animation flowing and it completely ruins the effect. I always recommend experimenting with turning off smoothing for some keyframes if your animation has issues. But I think you can easily see how the lack of anticipation made my old animations feel floaty. And now I've explained all of this, I think you'll also understand why that sniper animation felt more heavy. I briefly paused the animation as the left hand grabbed the magazine, meaning I instinctively realized that anticipation was important in creating a sense of weight and force. But I didn't learn the right lesson there, which is why I said you shouldn't do it. It breaks my rule of having every body part move every frame after all. Instead, you should continue to slightly rotate or move the gun and hands while the left hand is on the magazine, just about to rip it out. Then you follow the rule of anticipation as well as the one of movement every frame. Now this is all well and good you might think, but why do Modern Warfare's animations stand out so much then? So far you're only talking about the most basic of basics. Well, it's quite simple. One of the many reasons why MW's animations feel so awesome is because they simply exploit the anticipation principle to breaking point, along with an amazing secret sauce that I'll discuss in a bit. In my opinion, an animation feels snappy when you have a large amount of anticipation, a very short explosive movement and then an abrupt stop with a bit of what I'll call linger at the end. Linger is basically the opposite of anticipation. It's when the explosive movement has happened and it takes us just a moment for everything to calm down again. Every movement has anticipation and linger applied to it, and just with a lot faster acceleration in between than in other games. That doesn't mean that this happens nowhere else. You can spot very similar styles in other Call of Duty games, but I feel like Modern Warfare really perfected it. But there's more to these animations. The secret sauce, the big reason why these animations feel so visceral and weighty, the key to immersion is camera shake. Yes, really. Now it's not uncommon for games to apply camera shake to reloads. If you take a look at Battlefield 4 for example, you can see that while reloading the camera slightly jumps in the direction of the action that's taking place. So it quickly shoots downwards when you remove the mag for example. But games are usually really careful with this technique, they are clearly afraid to overdo it. But then came Call of Duty Modern Warfare and started shaking the camera with a ferocity never seen before. The camera shake in Modern Warfare consists of two main techniques. First you have what I call global camera shake. This is just a constant random movement of the camera as the reload is happening. This adds a lot of realism. The movement immediately feels less like a game and more like you're watching footage from a GoPro on someone's head. When you watch GoPro footage, there's always some shake as the person moves because we simply can't keep our heads completely still. Obviously, you should be more conservative with global camera shake during normal gameplay. It might be more realistic, but heavy use would make players annoyed at best and sick at worst. Besides, our brains stabilize the footage coming from our eyes, so it's not like it's actually realistic to have shake all over the place. Putting that aside, using global camera shake anytime you take away control from the player is something I recommend. I really feel like it makes a large difference. The second form of camera shake Modern Warfare uses is what I'll call contextual shake. This is when an action happens on screen and the camera shakes in sync with that action. It's what I also showed in that Battlefield 4 example earlier. Just like other things I've talked about, Modern Warfare just amps up this technique to 11. Anytime a magazine is removed, a gun is racked or any other impactful action happens on screen, you can count on the camera jolting in the direction of that action and vibrating heavily for a short while afterwards. As far as I know, Modern Warfare is the first game to fully commit to this animation style, and I genuinely think the camera shake plays a large part in selling the weight of these weapons. But why? Well, the animation principle of follow-through probably fits best here. It's the idea that when a movement happens, it also influences other movement, which will come to a halt later. Take hair for example, when a character runs, the hair doesn't move in sync. Instead it's slightly delayed and keeps moving for a bit even if the character stops walking. This effect can be used to elevate the feeling of fast acceleration and deceleration. When an action is so fast, so explosive, so powerful that even the camera shakes as a result, it just inherently tells us that, wow, there was a lot of force behind that. Earlier I said that MW is the first game to really commit to this technique, but I have seen it before. Where? Hyper. This is a guy on YouTube who mainly produces meme reload animations. There's a big chance you've seen some of his stuff before. If you watch some of his most popular videos, you'll immediately recognize the snappy, satisfying animation style. Every single one of his animations look weighty and visceral in a similar way to Modern Warfare. Besides the fact that he's just a fantastic animator, much of the power is conveyed through the heavy use of global and contextual camera shake. Take a look at this Big Mag video for example. You can see that with every shove of the magazine, the camera violently jolts, and in between those moments there's a slight constant shake. Why am I talking about this? Well, in an interesting turn of events, Hyper ended up getting hired by Infinity Ward. Yes, he actually worked on the animations of Modern Warfare. Of course I know nothing about the deal with this animation style. He might have learned it somewhere else, the other animators at Infinity Ward might have been on that path already, I don't know. I am very curious though what the reason is that it took so long for this clearly superior animation technique to find its way into AAA games. Hyper has been making awesome reloads for years, yet we never really saw that same quality in games, maybe until Call of Duty and Infinite Warfare and maybe Payday 2, though that one lacks camera shake and as a result lacks impact. Besides those, I haven't really seen anything that comes close to what Hyper has been doing for a long time. Now Hyper did actually work at Respawn for a short while before Infinity Ward, so he made some of the reload animations for Titanfall 2 as well. But there you don't see the snappy style pushed to similar extremes. And don't get me wrong, animations in Titanfall 2 are still great, but they don't call attention to themselves as much as MW. The camera shake is a lot less pronounced, almost not even noticeable, and the sound design is also less impactful in my opinion. Yes, sound design is of course also really important. I don't know why Hyper didn't end up making animations in Titanfall like he made them in his videos. It might just be that he was more of a time constraint, or maybe Respawn had already established some internal rules for animations and violence camera shake wasn't part of it. Once again, to be clear, the animations in Titanfall are not bad at all, but so far I think MW is his finest work. I get that I spent quite a lot of time talking about camera shake, it seems a bit ridiculous, but it genuinely helps with immersion. And like everything I discussed so far, it can be applied to a wide range of things. In Hyper's most recent video, by the way, please do check his channel out to see for yourself, but once again in his most recent video you can see an example of camera shake on other actions. The player character makes gestures expressing disbelief and frustration, and for every hand movement a lot of camera shake was applied. And it just works, man! I'm telling you, use this if you want to impress people with your animations. The quality jump shouldn't be as big as it is, but it just is. Also, when he throws a piece of the gun away in that video, you can also see that large amount of anticipation and quick explosive movement again, along with the shake. This makes the action feel aggressive. But that pretty much concludes everything I learned. Now I want to show my first FPS animations after I did the research that resulted in this video, to show the progress that can result from looking at examples of real games and watching some YouTube videos. Much better than before, right? Though of course still nowhere near Modern Warfare level. And I have to defend myself a little bit here, because I'm working in Dreams. Should you not be familiar with that game, that means that everything on screen was made on a PS4 with a PS4 controller in an engine that's extremely versatile, but limited compared to full professional game engines. And as a game developer in Dreams, animation is not the only thing I need to know to be able to create games. For my games I create assets, I make the music, I design the enemies, design the levels, I program the AI, I program the gameplay, write the story, I do the sound design, environment art, etc. All while balancing performance and memory, so it shouldn't be too surprising that I still have some ways to go. Besides, at the moment of recording this video, I've literally only been doing this for like a year and a half. But I think that all of this proves even more how awesome Dreams is. The fact that I can apply real-world animation lessons to improve my skills in a user-generated content game like Dreams is just awesome. Even if I don't reach the actual highs of professionals. And of course I'm still improving, I'm not done making first-person shooters, and I'll keep applying the rules I mentioned in this video while trying to learn new ones as well. So let's summarize the couple rules I learned to give a clear picture of what I think makes for visceral, snappy, all-around satisfying animations. First of all, every limb needs to move every frame. When a body part, like a hand, stays completely still, it feels unnatural, like you're looking at a robot. So always keep the movement going by just slightly moving the hands around, even when they aren't doing anything. Secondly, make heavy use of anticipation. This means set up movement. Don't pull the lever by gliding the hand over it. Make the hand firmly grab the lever, shake it violently as the force is applied, and only then slam it down with maximum acceleration and with a satisfying clack, after which the hand should stay on the lever for a split second to really sell that impact. When the player character inserts a magazine, be sure to first make them deaccelerate just as they first connect with the gun, and then smash the magazine into place. The fast acceleration is important. To make a movement feel snappy, spend as much time as possible in the anticipation phase, as little time as possible in the actual action, and as much time as possible on the linger afterwards again. Lastly, use that glorious camera shake. Apply global camera shake over your animation, making it look as if you're watching GoPro footage of the character's helmet, and then make use of heavy contextual camera shake as well. So once you pull out the magazine, slam a new one in, or as the earlier example, slam the lever down, I want the camera to jolt in the direction of that action. Now you know what makes for, in my opinion, satisfying animations. You'll probably now see these principles everywhere. I noticed, for example, in one of the Demon's Souls gameplay demos, the developers applied camera shake to every footstep of this fire giant boss. Immediately his movement feels heavier because of it, and that's a third-person game. Also in Halo Infinite, I might be wrong, but I think it might be taking inspiration from the Modern Warfare style. Especially the shotgun reload animation looks exactly how I would make it in Dreams after learning all of this. Before I wrap up this video, I want to say that while the principles as discussed in this video help greatly with improving animations, they are not the only reasons why Modern Warfare or any game's animations are great. If they were, anyone could become a great animator right now. In a game like Modern Warfare, there's also just a lot of detail packed into the animations. I know nothing about guns, so I can't appreciate all of the details, but there are just so many little movements, shakes and actions that only people intimately familiar with human movement, weapons and animation software can create. Seriously, some of the small movements in the hands of NW look like they were animated frame by frame. They are really detailed. I guess details are also the reason why it's somewhat unusual to see sci-fi games with a similar level of quality. When you design original weapons in a sci-fi universe, you won't create all these intricate and sometimes even unpractical mag release mechanisms, you'll just make the weapon as simple as possible. But yeah, that's pretty much it as far as this video goes. I could honestly talk for much longer about how different games approach reloads, how to specifically make them using the Dreams tools and more, but at some point a video like this just becomes too long. So I hope you learned something from this, and I'm looking forward to seeing how animations in Dreams will improve over the years. In the meantime, don't mind me as I'll try to get ahead in other aspects. I really want my first person characters to feel as great from a control standpoint as AAA ones. And as you might have noticed in Dream Relentless, I still have some catching up to do. My next project should greatly improve on many of the issues of my previous games though. For now, thank you very much for watching and I'll see you around.